Hi, my name is Matej, and today I will introduce you more about the DAOs. And our topic of the presentation would be like if you should present or should you experiment within the DAOs. And who I am, I'm actually founder and I'm running the Progress Bar within like the hackerspace, and I've been 2 days like the blockchain co-work, and I'm working on the Vue Polka.js components as author, and more you can find on that website. So our agenda for today would be like, what the heck is DAOs? What are the concepts like nowadays? Implementations, mostly the Polkadot, practical use case, and the conclusion. So for nowadays, we are ruled by the governments, and some rules we actually defined by chambers or something like that. So, and we think about it, how to make some collective decisions as humans to coordinate our so-called the bigger systems, and here's to reach the common goals. We really on some sort of the government and the private companies and the corporates who are protected by the enforceable laws, and everything what we know from the digital cryptocurrencies, that they have a ability to transfer some sort of the assets. But nowadays, the smart contracts they actually provide us to do some different kind of the transactions, and they are so-called like decentralized digital networks that enable us to create like new ways of the organizing our cooperation and on the large scale. So maybe you are familiar some of the things like the futarchy, liquid democracy, and radical markets. Raise your hands if you heard of one of three terms. Okay, perfect. So, okay, raise your hands who know what DAO is. Cool. And if you raise your hands, you know some DAO. Okay. So, DAO is like stands for decentralized autonomous organizations, and are similar to legal entities. And you may notice that I put the list on the deck, that there are a few running DAOs already right now, and I can later tell you more about each of them probably. So let's perceive that the DAOs should be something like the legal infrastructure within the particular jurisdiction in your state or local state of your neighborhood or your party, community group, whatever. And their existence right now is like purely digital and only have some sort of the rules and the frameworks. They are using like the automatics enforced by software and immutable smart contracts. Maybe you heard, are you familiar? Oh, sorry for this. You've been familiar with something the Vlad Zamfir said, the code is law or something like that. So I just turned on the screensaver, sorry. Okay, should be done. Okay, so in our loose sense of the word, we can say the Bitcoin and Ethereum are also DAOs, because if you hold some Bitcoins or Ethers, you are concluding yourself that you are agree with all the rules that are applicable to your, let's say, the wallet or the keys you hold for your funds or assets. And we can say that these rules, you are totally agree with them, and the rules are now enforced by the miners, which is actually underlayer of the networks at all, and existing DAOs in the narrow sense of the word are more like the, let's say, the formal companies, like all the Bitcoin and Ethereum are the company, and you can be part of it when you buy some Bitcoin or ETH. And current DAO ecosystem is still in like experimental stage, and we can already see its vibrant activity. Like the DAO builders in that list are projects to provide our tools and the building DAOs on the scale. So I could start with the most notable DAO in the 2016, which raised like 150 million, and it was immediately hacked. And that's all was pity, kind of, because there was like vulnerability in the smart contract. Then there was like guys called from the Aragon who raised like 60 millions to build like the alternative on Ethereum, and recently they're moving to the Cosmos. Then you have the DAO stack who raised like the double. Now you have, maybe you heard about the Moloch DAO, actually being used as a coordination DAO for the EF grants. And there you have the Meta Cartel, which is actually the fork of the Moloch DAO. Then you have there the colony. It should be like oriented for the task and the collaborations inside your company. Then you have the edgeware, which actually is a part of the Commonwealth, and they are experimenting with the various the governance models and based on the economic incentives. Then you have the democracy Earth, and decentralized democratic organization with open participations for everyone. And maybe you know, some of you, the DAOs, they have like the on-chain governance, and they are using this sort of the governance to vote the various proposals for the miners. And there is like less notable like Decred and Digix. So what's the point of the DAO? For me, like it's like origin of this tweet, but I totally agree with this. This is actually the DAO should be like your trustless fund for the custody. It should be like the cheap way to manipulate the funds or funds to coordinate this sort of the entities, and it should have some sort of the frictionless fund distribution. So actually, if you agree on something, it should like be totally mutable agreement for all. So there's actually some of the things called the multi-winner in elections and rolling elections, and I will talk about it later. So, and this is like key points that should state for the DAO. So I just recap it that it should like coordinate these shared goals for share the pool of resources. This is actually what you take away from this presentation. Okay, so what's this next? Okay, is DAO for any good? So DAO doesn't mean it's like automated. It's like should be like autonomous, and it actually needs your proof of presence. So actually, you need to vote for it or something like that. So actually, every vote in the DAO depends on the coin holder, and that's actually been called the coin voting. So actually, if you hold some sort of the funds of the particular asset, like in the Ethereum, you can actually propose or signal some sort of the coin voting. Like maybe you heard about previously this summer about the lock drops or something like that for the edgeware. And in every DAO, there should be like the flow, like anybody who is like the holder should propose some or submit some sort of the proposals, and others like in their so-called the council, they can vote for them. And each action is like represented with some form of the transactions. Actually, if you sign by your private keys and broadcast it to the network, it's like it's there. I can talk about more about interesting mechanics. It's like the shares votes can be like the transferred in one transactions. Most notable is like from the guy who is like behind the MakerDAO. It was done on the Berlin 2 this summer. It's called the Sellout DAO, and literally something sort of delegated proof of stake, but on the level of the DAO, that when you can sell your votes for some amount of the money. So literally, you can like it's transparent bribe, and you can literally buy a vote in the Moloch DAO. So actually, you can easily get in. Actually, one guy from Democracy Earth, the Santi, actually used it by the Marinos votes, and he's like now member of the Moloch DAO, and this is totally legit. So this is how the vote delegation could be achieved. Okay, but DAOs have actually also have some problems, and there are like issues that most notable issue is like the low voter turnout. That happens often at MakerDAO, that actually like little less maker holders vote for some new rules or proposal, and mostly on the community calls for the stability fee. And actually there is like some sort of the attack that you can like buy the maker tokens at the time for $2,000, and you can actually lower your stability fee and do some trading or, you know. And there is actually things which is actually recently new, that the SEC actually pursues the legal forms of the DAOs. So we will see. And the problem in the DAOs is actually right now the security. So, but I'll talk later in other slides. So, and I can just recap these slides that the whole purely vision of the DAO is like, if you want to like, let's say to fire your CEO or something like, or change CEO, actually whole holders of that asset can vote and the CEO could be replaced. You can like vote for some higher new layer, and you can like pay a certain amount of for some salary as bonus for some exact work or something like that. So pretty much that. Okay, so this is actually some real world use case where the DAO was used, and these DAOs were built on top of the DAO stack. And these are three notable ones, like the Polka DAO, the Genesis DAO, and the Kyber DAO. You may see that the amount of the money in actually the voted, somebody submitted the proposal, and they get paid, and they delivered some sort of work. Pretty much that's it. So okay. So raise your hands who knows the Bitcoin. Perfect. So as I told previously, the Bitcoin as it's purely firm, is sort of the DAO, but has a problem that the Bitcoin has the static and the conservative the governance, because you have the problem that the issuance of the all Bitcoin is already known. So there's like various security questions raised, and actually problem with the Bitcoin is that there is like lack of the fee market, so actually it doesn't save it. I should actually say that not of any of these opinions in my presentations are not legal advice. So, okay, what's next? And the problem right now in the Bitcoin world is that any of the improvement proposals which are designed on the Bitcoin Core GitHub are only implemented by Bitcoin Core developers, and then you need to wait to miners to vote for your proposal. So actually it's a pretty tight process, and it's actually like, let's say, the bottleneck of the governance of the whole Bitcoin. So, but maybe you heard about the proof of the stake blockchains. Raise your hands who heard about the proof of stake. Okay. And the proof of stakes have some sort of problems, like it's perceived by people invest in them as the believers, and there's actually some sort of the attacks that when the people buy that asset for the amount of price and change the blocks and do some malicious transactions inside it. So you should perceive this blockchain platform as like for diversity, and the stakeholder sets should be like evergreen changing or something like that. So, and there is like problem. A lot of these proof of the stakes chains have some sort of the progress, which is actually not monotonic, and they're missing like the upgradability as the whole process. So, and I will just call this like the meta governance in this talk. So, who heard about the Polkadot? Oh, cool. At least someone. So the Polkadot is like the projects, which should be like one of the interoperability projects. One is the Polkadot, other is the Cosmos. And they have like the built-in the DAO mechanics. And they have like three components, like the treasury, the democracy, and the staking. So I will talk about in the next slides. And okay, so in Polkadot, there is like the governance, and there is like governance focused on the how we do the runtime upgrades in the chain. So we actually defined how our stakeholders agree on the particular upgrades, but we actually need to define how the stakeholders can change how we do they agree on the upgrades, you know. So this looks like how the whole Polkadot looks like. You have like the validators, collators, nominators, fishermen, and developers. There's like the key points of or key stones of key personas of the whole network, which actually are decision makers. Then you have the main personas in the Polkadot world, and this is like types of our coin holders, which are the validators, collators, and fishermen, the core developers, like for example me, the parachain and parathreads runnings, who actually buys the parachain slots in the shared security layer, and the investors, like literally the dot holders. And you may notice that all these these four categories of the peoples, they may, but they may not have the shared interests in the running the same goal. So I will go back to the coin voting problem. So whole coin voting problem is that it has a low voter turnout. So a lot of the proof of the stakes networks are minting the new block rewards, and thus you are lowering your thresholds to pass some sort of the proposal or something like that. Then you have like the capital has network effects like the plutocracy, when like anybody could like buy the set of the assets, and they can change their rules in their network or something like that. And then you can like let's say have problem that with the dots you don't can anybody buy the dots because it's like really scarce. And okay, so we just in the Polkadot we have like the so-called informal governance rough consensus, and you may know the Vlad Zamfir for his quote, and he just says that you should stay like the, let's say, the undefined, because the whole network will be controlled by the very small minority. And you want the and okay, how this works in the other project is like for example in the Maker, this is done by community calls and community forums where you're discussing ideas with a lot of new stakeholders who actually recently buy their assets, and you want to have like to be on the same line or same page. But what happens in the practice, these decisions are often converged to a few personalities, and the final decisions are often interpreted by very small minority. So in the Polkadot, we have like this council, and makes it the whole process like more and more transparent and more auditable. So we try to avoid, in let's say in theory, that you capture the whole the governance system and the process, and whole how to say, and how these collective decisions are trying to evade to be captured by the small minority. So, okay, so this governance in the Polkadot have some sort of the Goldilocks, and the Goldilocks, I will just explain the term, is like something for the habitable planet. It's not so far, not so close to the sun, so it's like actually the middle. So it's something like you are not in the bear market or bull market, but you are finding your product differentiation, and you are looking for some sort of the versioning or the best version for your audience or your holders or something like that. And this is where magic happens. And this actually change the consensus right pace and represents the stakeholder interests. So this on the picture is actually how the whole single council governance on the Polkadot looks like. And you have like the members who are so-called domain experts in each thing, because you have like the proposals, and you are voting for the, let's say, the protocol upgrades, and you have like a lot of protocol upgrades, like what could be like a fee per transaction or something like that. And every council member has 3 rights right now. They have like the fast track proposals, they have like the bias proposals specific with support, and they have like veto. Actually, yes, there is like right now the problem, they could like by one veto, they can shut down the network, but it didn't happen yet. So, okay, this is actually how it looks like the process for your imaginations. You have like the proposal, you have like the council, and they vote, they have like rolling elections with the votes, and you have like the public referendum, and then you have like random upgrade, which is actually literally the block, and it's distributed between the block validators. So, okay, to explain more, the purpose of the council is like each member of the council is like responsible to review the runtime upgrades, and they should like mitigate malicious referenda or uncontroversially dangerous referenda, which actually some sort of hurt the value of the network or the interest of the stakeholders. And to be short, like they should like filter these upgrade proposals, and they should bias the public referendum to beneficial use of that upgrades. And okay. So I would just some these things that the blockchain is a cryptocurrency, that this blockchain system should they should like propose how this state weight the voting system should work, and how this coordination of the upgrade should work in the sort of the meta governance. So in this Polkadot, we got this governance process to coordinate the runtime upgrades, and we learned that we want to define the rules, and we want to allow to make decisions, and these decisions are held accountable for the system. So, and we are looking for some the Goldilocks criteria, so not to be too slow, because they will propose for the stagnancy and the fragmentation of the network and neglecting. And if it's too fast, it makes the network more volatile, not just on the price, but on the opinion as well, and may collapse. So, okay. And I think this is the end of the slides almost. So actually the DAO is like in ancient Chinese world, so philosophy of the way of happiness is a coincidence. And yeah, one of my questions is if we can have the DAO structure to optimize for happiness. I think it's what we want to do. This is actually the sources I've been using for this talk. And if you are curious how many DAOs are running out there, so this is actually the map of the decentralized government network. So you can scan your mobile and it's like more interactive, and you can see the names there. So if anybody is scanning or so. And okay. Yeah, this is like answer. Definitely you should experiment with the within DAOs. And if you are more interested in what DAO is, we'll be doing like this presentation more in the progress bar in Bratislava. So actually you can give us a like or join our Telegram channel and ask more questions or so. And pretty much that's it. So thank you for your attention. Okay. So